Hello and welcome to Mariology Without Apology. This is Dr. Mark Miravalle. I am addressing these comments particularly to the Mariology Without Apology group, not exclusively in any sense, but I'm, I'm trying to convey, I hope to convey a message, especially to my brother and sister academics, those clergy who have the great possibility of preaching and teaching, also to authentic Catholic social media journalists, because we have a problem and we have a solution, and both have to be articulated with a new force, with a new power, with a new promulgation. So, what's the problem? The problem, my friends, is abortion. Now, I know that's not new to you, but since the U.S. elections, I have even further grasped the frightening level of platforms that say, as their principal representation, I am for abortion rights. And by the way, this is not a political statement, it's a moral statement. I was thinking on my ride back from Mass today, Jesus is not going to ask what political party you belong to when you see him face to face. He is going to ask, how did you treat his unborn brothers and sisters? He will ask that. And we will all have to atone and explain and present exactly how we treated his unborn brothers and sisters. So in light of the recent U.S. election, and most all commentators saying that the abortion issue was a predominant factor in many elections. So let's just break that down for a moment. We are now saying that as my first reason that I hope you vote for me, I'm speaking now as a potential politician, not myself, of course, but the platforms that are out there. As the first thing I'm going to represent, I'm going to represent killing babies. That's going to be first. And after that, I might have certainly other elements that I think are important. But my one-liner, my bumper sticker, my motto, my reason for you to pick me over the other person is that I am going to strongly, with a new commitment, support killing babies in the womb. This has reached a new level. Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, there's been a new, really, I believe, without indicting people involved in terms of their level of responsibility. I don't know that. I don't read hearts. But there's a new level of really a diabolical support for killing kids in the womb, almost as a bravado, almost as something one toasts about, and one makes sure that everyone knows this position. And many commentators said, according to commentators, that this person won or this person lost because this person was for abortion, and that garnished enough votes to make the difference. This is grotesque. This is a new level of not only permitting abortion, but making it your banner. This hasn't happened before in the United States. And for our friends who often tune in from Europe and other places, I know, sadly for you, this is old hat. This has been going on for years. For our brothers and sisters who tune in from Africa and Latin America and Asia and parts of Eastern Europe, like Poland, there still is a semblance for life's sacred dignity, even in the laws. So this is new and it's grisly. It's frightening. It's also true that there's no sin that calls down God's judgment more than the sin of abortion. And that's why this is not going to be without its ramifications for the United States. So most people that would be listening to this program certainly understand the things I'm talking about. I have to say ever so quickly, I was in Baltimore last weekend and I had to take a cab. And the first comment that the cab driver made to break the ice, between him and myself was, He said, can you believe how we're criminalizing women just because they want to remove their fetus, and later we don't even take care of their babies? And I said, wait a minute, you just went from fetus to baby. Do you follow the science? Do you follow the science of the first international conference on abortion that happened not far from here, where I was in Baltimore, of course, in Washington, D.C. in 1963, when scientists said there's no point after the union of sperm and egg that you can say it's not a human life. No point after the union of sperm and egg until the baby is born that you cannot say there's human life. Embryology, a unique human genetic structure from the moment of conception. Are you following the science that you say you do? And very quickly, by God's grace, he said, okay, because quite frankly, I made it personal. I said, what about, you have children? I said, when your wife came to you and said, I'm pregnant with our first, did you say, oh, it's probably only 4 or 5 weeks, that's just a fetus? He said, oh, no, I rejoiced, and I went and I rubbed her tummy, thinking that somehow I could have a connection with myself and the baby. I said, exactly, because there was a baby there. And later in the conversation, he says, okay, I'm pro-life. I'm against abortion. Then went on to other subjects. But as an icebreaker, what does that presuppose? That presupposes it's such an acceptable and positive topic. This is someone who's expecting a tip from me, right? He's trying to, in a fair way, have a fair relationship, or at least a cordial one. And he starts with that because that's what evidently most people consider to be a positive icebreaker, or at least that's where we're at in terms of assumptions of most people being pro-abortion. And based on some of the voting, it looks like it may be the case that over half of our country has now become pro-abortion. There are differences of opinion about exact numbers on that, but that's not my point. My point is we have now entered the culture of death like never before. And as I said, if you watch Mariology Without Apology, you're there. You're almost certainly pro-life to begin with. Okay, that's the remedy. Excuse me, that's the problem. And it's not just that problem. Of course, as Mother Teresa says, you kill babies in the womb, you're going to kill them in the streets. You're going to kill people in the streets. You've lost the whole principle of what pro-life means. What's the solution? And this is where I call, in a special way, and not exclusively, we thank God for the quote, common Catholic. I mean, no Catholic is common because you're participating in grace, but you understand what I mean? That the Sunday faithful, the pro-life individual, the person who is becoming a saint by doing his ordinary task, or she in an extraordinary way. And oftentimes you're the ones who carry the day because you're the foundation for faith and life. But I am also talking to people in a position to do something in terms of preaching and teaching. What's the remedy? The remedy's Our Lady. Now, before you scoff or before you say, well, that's pretty light, or, yeah, I know she's the remedy in some general way, let me get more specific. 1915, Cardinal Desiree Mercier. For those familiar with Cardinal Mercier, he was a brilliant theologian and was known as the Pope of the North during his lifetime, especially in the late teens and early 20s. He said, if we solemnly proclaim that Mary is the spiritual mother of all people and the mediatrix of all graces, and he always, by the way, rested that on the foundation of her role as the co-redemptrix. If we proclaim this, there will be a historic release of grace. Now, this is just a theologian. We're not talking private revelation here, and I'll mention that a little bit later here, but this is just a theological deduction, and he's right. So think about this, if you've not thought about this before. If you want Our Lady to intercede more powerfully in our time, especially, not exclusively, but especially for the abortion issue, to change the slaughter of kids, acknowledge her. Proclaim her truth. Because if we look at Scripture, that leads to historic grace. Matthew 16, 15 through 20. Who do they say that the Son of Man is? Jesus asked. Simon steps forward. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus says, this didn't come from you, Simon, but from above, and now you are a rock. So what happens? Jesus rewards a proclamation of truth with a historic grace. Well, he wants to do the same thing now, but we're not acknowledging the remedy. And by that, I'm not saying we don't pray the rosary. I'm not saying that many don't do consecration, which is wonderful. But Our Lady, in the minds of many, is still kind of Our Lady, the statue in the corner. She's still someone to light a candle to. We certainly love her. We intercede. But we don't see her as the remedy. So I want to present now a theological rationale, not devotional, theological rationale for why she's the remedy and why proclaiming her roles will allow her to fully activate a historic release of grace. For abortion, for the crisis in the church, for the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, for the situation between China and Taiwan, for the tensions between Iran and Israel, and all the other things. Because that's what grace does. I had a conversation. Martin Sheen was kind enough to voice a Marian documentary on the fifth Marian dogma a few years back. And as I was discussing with him, the reasons for doing this and why we asked him to do it, he said, well, what about the social justice issues? And I said, Martin, grace affects every issue, every single issue. And so if you want to help the poor, you want equality in the workplace, you want women to be treated with more dignity, then help us proclaim the dogma. Help us raise understanding of this so Our Lady, as the mediatrix of all graces, can fully intercede. And thanks be to God, that was convincing for him, and he did a wonderful pro bono voiceover of our documentary for the fifth Marian dogma. So, why is it theologically appropriate to believe, to hold, that if we acknowledge Our Lady's roles, she can more fully intercede on our behalf? Well, first of all, let's look at history. Go back to the 3rd century and the time of the Roman persecution. They went to the Mother. We fly to your patronage, O Holy Mother of God. Despise not our petitions and our necessities, but in your mercy deliver us. And so the sub tuum was the prayer of the 3rd century Christian against persecution. Why? Because they believed in the Mother's power, the power of intercession, especially during crisis. We go to Lepanto. We all know the event of Lepanto. A much smaller Christian naval fleet defeats the much larger Muslim Turk fleet. Why? Because Pius V, Pope Saint Pius V, called Christendom to pray the rosary. And Our Lady heard, and Our Lady was freed by our prayers to intercede for a miraculous victory. Same thing with the Battle of Vienna in 1683. King Sobieski, the Polish troops, first going before Our Lady at Czestochowa and committing themselves to her intercession, routs a much larger and established Muslim Turk fleet in Austria. It happens over and over and over. Also, in 1849, when the Pope was in exile in Gaeta because of a Masonic army coming from south and north to dispel him of the office of papacy and also of the Vatican States, cardinals came to him and said, Holy Father, declare the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, and Our Lady will intercede and save the church and the papacy. Well, Pius IX, Blessed Pius IX, agreed. He does the definition in 1854. The Vatican, he was returned to Rome, and in fact, this proclamation, in a real sense, leads to the definition of papal infallibility in 1870. Why? Because Our Lady has the power, and when we intercede and acknowledge her roles, that's what happens. So the same is true now. Cardinal Mercier started this movement during World War I, asking for this historic grace. Of course, it was not defined during World War I. We now face a situation with what I would say, even for the optimistic and realistic Christian, is an unprecedented attack on life, family, society, and faith. So, who doesn't think we don't need an extraordinary intervention from Our Lady? And secondly, who doesn't think that proclaiming her truth will not allow her to more fully intercede? That's an issue of freedom, right? That when we consent to the Mother, then and only then can she bring us full grace. You could say the same thing about Marian consecration. Well, why bother doing Marian consecration? Because Our Lady's already mediatrix of all graces, and she can give you all the graces you need. But you see, Marian consecration is your yes to her full intercession. That's why it's good to do it. Same thing with praying the rosary. Well, I don't need to pray the rosary because I believe that she's the mother of all peoples and co-redemptrix and mediatrix and our advocate. And yes, but you're praying the rosary frees her, so to speak, in the order of God's providence, because God said you can't force grace on anybody. That rosary frees her to intercede with a special efficacy. So see this on the global plane, my friends, with the Vicar of Christ, the holder of the keys of St. Peter. When he solemnly acknowledges that she's the spiritual mother of all peoples, yes, Mercier is right. You can expect a historic grace. Grace affects everything, including protecting the unborn child in the womb, and the human trafficking, and the life of the mother, and the care of the mother, and how we treat each other in every walk of life, let alone also mitigating the justice of God for offending him by destroying his image in the womb. Yes, every abortion is a direct offense to God the Creator. And in that sense, I mentioned the word diabolic before. I'm going to mention it again. I'm not saying that people know that they're participating with the adversary so strongly, but you see, an abortion is really a satanic concept, principle of saying, I don't want life. I don't want the life that only the Creator can give. And I'm going to say for a third time, I'm not saying that everybody that commits an abortion is possessed, but I'm saying it's serving the agenda of the adversary, who is anti-life, because God the Father is the creator of life. So yeah, every abortion does in fact destroy the image of God the Father. So remedy. Please pray. And I say to my colleagues, my brother and sister professors, clergy, bishops, priests, deacons, journalists. I mean, Catholic journalists, you have such an important role because of your ability to promulgate the truth. Journalists, people in social media now, teach and preach the truth of the church. There's nothing novel with this. Teach and preach that Mary is the spiritual mother of all peoples, given by Jesus to every single human being from Calvary. Teach and preach her role as the co-redemptrix. Now, I know that there has been recent statements regarding the title co-redemptrix, but I want to make reference to the Holy Father's comment, his teaching in October of 2013. And it was October 23rd of 2013, 21st, excuse me, of 2013, where he says, Mary participated in the martyrdom of her heart, united with the passion of her Son, and offered her sufferings with his for the purpose of salvation. That's a profound summary of co-redemption. Keep in mind, my friends, the title co-redemptrix is just a one-word summary of the role which Pope Francis so beautifully taught. He again said on January 1st, 2021, there is no salvation without the woman of salvation. Well, there you go. That's co-redemption. That's what we're talking about. So apart from perhaps some misunderstanding about what the title means, the papal magisteriums over and over, St. John Paul II calling Our Lady co-redemptrix 7 times, Pius XI before him 3 times, and this unbroken teaching of Marian co-redemption from Pope Benedict XIV in the 18th century to our present Holy Father. Teach it, preach it, have the courage to call Our Lady who she is. She is the co-redemptrix. She uniquely participated, cooperated with Jesus in the redemption of the world. She is the new Eve with the new Adam. Let's teach it and preach it, and let's write about it. And you students of theology and Mariology, I know I'm blessed by having many of my students also tap into, or tap in is probably not the right word, but view Mariology Without Apology. When you choose papers in theology, do it on Our Lady. Do it on Our Lady's role, because you'll become more articulate in what the Church already teaches. And that can also be a positive segue to speaking about why it would be so blessed. It would be such a historic blessing to have her roles solemnly defined, so she can fully activate, fully, to use an overused word, be empowered to bring us the grace and peace that we so desperately need. So, in light of the tragedy of the United States seemingly becoming more abortion supporting by the day, let's focus even more on the remedy. It is Our Lady, not Our Lady in the corner, Our Lady in heaven, who is suppliant omnipotence, as popes have called her. She is omnipotent not by nature, she's not God, but she is omnipotent in the order of intercession because her Son refuses her nothing. Let's get her crowned. Let's do what we can. And of course, we're called to pray for our Holy Father. Don't worry about human expectations or calculations. God's ways are not our ways. Pray for our Holy Father and the proclamation of the fifth Marian dogma, so we can do our part to help every aspect of society, which, at least for the West, is seriously tainted with an anti-God, anti-faith, anti-family agenda. And we're talking about lives here in a very key, sadly quintessential and ubiquitous way. We need the remedy. So finally, once again, colleagues, teachers, writers, people that do social media, spread the truth about what the Church teaches on Our Lady. She is the spiritual mother of all peoples. She is co-redemptrix, mediatrix, and advocate. She is the remedy for abortion and the other serious maladies that are affecting human society. With that proclamation, we will have the key to the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and we will eventually have the victory Our Lady promises. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. Thanks for watching. God bless you all.